Everyone, welcome to part 4 of the 5-part Decentraland workshop. Today we're going to be mostly going over 3D models and how they work in Decentraland and how to create them. All the little nuts and bolts about it, at least as much as I can pack in this specific course. So first things first is I would like anyone who hasn't already downloaded Blender, please go to the website and grab it up. So Blender is an open source, free 3D modeling application. You don't need a super crazy computer to run it as well. I'm actually running this on a MacBook Air, and you'll see it works pretty well. I'm going to do a light instructional on how to navigate around and to do certain things. But there's Blender Guru, who's one of the best, if not the best, people on YouTube to explain all things related to Blender. I highly recommend going through the beginner tutorial series. It's fantastic. Now, he's very focused on rendering things for like films and very high poly, very rich assets. In Decentraland, we tend to not really have to go that far or that deep. As the Decentraland gets more performance and everything, we'll be able to hit pretty realistic models. But for the time being, just go through the beginner tutorial and just get an idea about all the materials and stuff. And we'll cover some of that stuff today because I think it's really critical. Okay, so also just want to point out the Unity Asset Store. So this is a place that you can go and look at models that you may want to import into Decentraland. Some really good ones to start off, or kind of like these polygon ones, are always pretty useful to just pull in. They can be done or can be imported without too much effort. So we'll look at some of these types of things, like what we should look for when we want to buy an asset. Some are really expensive, but you can also go to pricing and go to free assets, and you can see a whole bunch of free stuff as well. Some of it's better than others. I mean, obviously free is free, right? You get what you pay for. But for like trees and certain stuff like that, it's pretty cool. Some cute chickens, etc. Okay. And also Sketchpad, which is I think a higher tier, although some of these things are lower prices, oddly enough. Some of them. This will be a really good resource for you to get an idea of what the capability in Decentraland is, because this is all being rendered in it's not in the Unity engine, but it's their own custom engine that is very similar. So you can see that we can get some really cool 3D models in Decentraland if we wanted to. I always come to this one for some reason. So you can get photorealistic. If anybody wants to make this the entrance to a heavy metal venue, I highly recommend. It's only $40. It's not too bad. Just run in there. That'd be weird, but kind of cool. You can kind of see. Okay, so let's just open up Blender real quick, and this just kind of bounce around. Now, you will likely see this. I don't think I modified anything, but for the most part, this is what you'll get. So you see is your default cube. You can move around by just, I'm on a trackpad, and I'm just spinning it around. It's like almost like an iPad. You can zoom in as well. It is customary. It's almost a ritual where you click on the cube and you hit X and you delete the cube. It's just the way that, I don't know, it's part of a ritual. So I highly recommend you guys do that. And you spin around a little. We're going to do something. We're going to add an object, and this is going to introduce us to this little pane up over here. So there's two modes in Blender. There's object mode and there's edit mode. And object mode just lets you bounce around an object that you might have a series of objects. I'll just add a couple things. Like I'm going to add, I'll click on add. I'm going to add a mesh. I'm going to add that cube back that we just deleted because it's Blender. And I'm going to click over here. There's a move. I'm just going to move it for a second. And I'm going to add a couple new objects. And I'm just going to slightly just like move them around. Say maybe a cylinder. Just get them around just so we can see the object in edit mode. So object mode up over here, right there, you can see it. And I can click on each of these individual objects. And over here on the right-hand side, we can see the list in this list view, and you could rename them if you want to as well by double clicking. Just rename, whatever, right? It's alphabetical. You can see that it's automatically sorting. You can toggle the visibility of these things on and off pretty easily from over here. Okay, and that's pretty much object view. Object view also, as well as edit view, they also have different ways of viewing your models that are visible up here on the top right. So if you click between these four, you can see that the first one is a wireframe. It just gives you an idea of how many polygons and triangles and stuff that are in your model. And if you go to the next mode, this is just a very flat view. And then the next view is a little bit more lighting, where it adds in the shading, and then the one all the way on the right is your full on light. Okay. So you'll see when we made this default scene, it also added in a camera and a light source. So this light source, you can click it. These arrows indicate the different axes, the xi. I don't know how you say that. But you can click on one and just move it in one direction. Right, you can move it up and down. You notice the lighting in the scene is actually changing. Decentraland doesn't really use these lights actually. So these are just for you as you're moving around to just get a better idea what's actually happening. Okay. And now we're going to switch over to edit mode. So we have object mode and we have edit mode. So when you click on an object, then it's allowed to enter into the various different modes. For right now, we'll just do just a simple edit mode. Click on it. Alternatively, for speed, you can just hit tab to switch in and out of object and edit mode. And as I do this, you'll notice that a lot of things around the screen are kind of changing, right? So object mode and edit mode. Well, edit mode just added a whole bunch of other little features down here that allow me to manipulate this specific model a lot easier. Right? Alternatively, over here, this little thing, I'm going to hit tab, the texture, right, for the model appears and disappears. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But let's go back to edit mode. So when we're in edit mode, now I can select all of the various vertices because it defaults to this vertex mode. So our models are composed of these individual points. Cube has so many points here. If I want to click on one of them and then move it, I can it's just very similar to how objects, just moving the entire object around. But now I'm hyper focused on an individual vertex. Right? You can hit undo with Command Z or Control Z. Right? We also have edges. So then one over looks like a little rectangle. That's for the edge. So this entire side, if I wanted to, I can go ahead and just move it around. And then obviously the last one is the face. You can just kind of move the face up and down. So you can manipulate it from this way. Right? And if you were to take a look at the other objects, just switch over to edit mode, right? If you hold shift and drag on the trackpad, it'll reposition the camera. But for ease of use, you can hit shift and the tilde, which will enter into first person mode. And this is very familiar to people that play video games. You can just use WAS to kind of just move around the scene. If you can hold shift to move a little bit faster. And this is really useful for when you're just working on a model. It's important to spin around your model the more. Just get a message. Cool. So the same thing applies with this one. Obviously, the cylinder has a lot more of these edges, and it has a lot of these different faces. Okay. So it's pretty much the gist of it. Like this is pretty good for just moving around. You don't have to get too crazy. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna switch over to object mode. I'm gonna select all of them, even the camera and the lighting. And I'm gonna delete everything for right now. And we're gonna start by, we're gonna make, in our scene here, we're gonna make the ground, like a single plot. And we're gonna, from there, we're gonna build a very simple house or a structure. You can use any 3D modeling app for the most part to do a lot of this stuff, but Blender is free and it's useful. It's really good to use this one. But people they do use SketchUp and other ones as well. I'm just not as familiar with those, and I do hear that there are some complications about getting them into Decentraland that I'm just not familiar with, but maybe in a future video we might actually go over that. Okay, so let's also point out one little thing that's important, which is this little red and white circle in the center of the screen here in the middle of our axis. So this green and red where they merge together is 0, 0, 0. Right, and we have this is called the 3D cursor that's sitting in there. So whenever I go to add and create any of these objects, like I'm going to add a plane right now, it's going to place it in the center, or like that right where this point is. So now that that's happened, we're going to switch over to edit mode, and this is really important. Is I want to adjust that 3D cursor for a moment. I want to just actually, you guys follow along, I want to click this leftmost piece over here, and I want to now hit Shift S, and Shift S, you're going to use this a lot. It allows you to select. It's like a hotkey quick navigator for being able to select stuff. So I want to move my 3D cursor to that little point, that corner. So I'm going to just do that. You notice that it moved from one point to over here. Okay. So the point of what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make this a 16 meter by 16 meter wide piece of land, and we're going to position it right here in the center of this XYZ axis, because that's going to be a single plot of land. So when we have a single plot, we want to build it out. We know what area we're working with our model. It'll help us a lot. But we're going to switch over back to object mode. Now you'll notice that when I selected this plane, each object has its own center of gravity, its own center, or its base. When we created this plane, it put that in the middle. You can see that by the little orange dot. That's how, if I was to hit R, which is another shortcut to rotate it, you'll notice it spins on that axis because that's the center. Okay. Also, while you're doing a lot of these things, you can hit X to just rotate something on a specific axis, right? You can shift between these modes. So you can see in the top right, I'm sorry, the top left, global X, see the rotation. I can hit Y and rotate it on that way, or Z, we'll spin it that way. So it just makes it a little bit easier. And if you hit Shift, it'll go slower. And kind of just, if you want to get more fine-tuned with it, and I think there's a snap. I don't forget what snap is actually, but there's a way to snap it. Okay, I'm gonna undo it. I just want to, I might do that inadvertently, and I just want you to be aware of what I'm doing with it. So this point, the 3D cursor is over here. This object still has its center of gravity, essentially is right here in the middle. We just go to object, and we go to set origin, and origin to 3D cursor. Right, so we put it over there, so now it's here. Cool. Now there's this little tab over here. It's maybe not as visible as it can be, but you see a little arrow right above where my cursor is. This opens up a lot more information about the current tool or thing that you're currently working with. So we want to be precise with this because, as we know, Decentraland kind of argues and yells a lot of things are out of bounds. So we want to be as precise as possible. So I'm going to move this entire thing by just actually adjusting the values to 0 on the X and 0 on the Y. I could have alternatively used these little things and try to pull it and push it around, but what if it was a little bit more and I'm zooming around and I can't really see it? It's just a lot easier just to go ahead and just set it. Cool. So the next step is, this is not the size that we actually need it to be at the moment. We need it to be 16 meters by 16 meters. So if we click this other vector over here, we can see that this is 2 meters by -2 meters. Well, if we just adjust this, just like we did with the other one, we just do 16 meters, and we'll do -16 meters. You can see it's not as visible. Let me see if I can adjust it. It's probably really light, huh? Let me just switch the view so you guys can see a little better. Apologize. But you can see it shot all the way out there. That is where it should be, but all these other ones are not in the right spot. So let's just click each of these. So this should probably be at -16. It defaults to meters, I believe, by the way, so it works really well with Decentraland's metric system they have. So this is the size of a plot of land. I can actually export this as a model right now, and it would just be just a white box, or a plane on the ground. But we might want to do something a little bit more interesting with it. Let's do that. Okay. So let's get out of object mode, and let's see. You know what? No, let's go back into object mode. Let's click on that thing. Let's go to edit mode. I'm gonna hit A. So when you hit A, it selects all of the vectors and everything. You got it? Okay. So now that we have all of that, I want to now select the center. We're gonna make a box in the middle of this thing, but we want it to be in the center of our parcel. So I'm gonna hit Shift S like I did before, and we're gonna see this thing again. I'm gonna now go to cursor to selected. So what it's going to do now is it's actually gonna put that back down in the middle of it. And now we know when I go to object mode and I add in, let's say a cube, we know that it's gonna build it right there in the center. We're gonna make a quick house with this thing. I'm gonna move it up a bit. For this type of thing, I might actually want to just do the math on it. So it should just, this thing is 2 meters tall by default, I think. So if we just move this thing to, oh no, 1 meter, I'm sorry, 1 meter on the Z axis, we'll kind of pull it up. Okay, cool. So now let's hit switch to edit mode. And let's start editing this thing out. So we learned just a moment ago that in edit mode, I can go ahead and click on the face. This will be useful. I can click on the side here. I could use the green arrow to just start to pull to build something of a house, right? The red axis on this side. Okay, I'm gonna hit Shift and the tilde, the thing next to the one character on our keyboards to move around in the 3D space a little bit easier. And I'm just gonna make a kind of a little bit of a large structure just real quickly. I'm just gonna hit all of these guys and just slide them. Now I want it to be a little bit tall too, so I'm just gonna lift it up a bit. Cool. So just to start, I want to try to just export this real quick, just so that we can get into the process. Because if we're going to be working in Blender with Decentraland, getting a good workflow is really important, so that we can quickly save something and see it in the world itself. Because there is a slight difference between the way that we'll see things in Blender and Decentraland, and it's best to just keep it going together. So let's do that. So we did this last week. But we're going to make a new project. We have our Decentraland workshop GitHub repository. I believe the link is in the chat. If it isn't, I'm sure it will be there shortly. So this is the same repository we used for the previous session, so you guys should still have it. You remember session 1, 2, 3. Let's make a new directory called session 4. Let's go into it. And let's make a new Decentraland project. So let's do DCL and it. And it's going to go ahead and do what it does. It's going to scaffold our entire project again. Okay. And I'm going to do code. This is my shortcut that I have, but you would want to open this up in your IDE. If you have Visual Studio, you can go ahead and install that shortcut. It's really useful. I think it's the code CLI plugin. And okay, so now this is a very familiar thing. We have this project, but we do not have a models directory in our repository. So let's do that. Let's just make a new folder. Let's type in models. Let's get attacked by a mosquito. Okay, so we have that. Let's look at our game TS. And just like with the cube, we're gonna go ahead and just gonna delete it to start. Select the 2 things that are going to fresh. Cool. So now that we have a place to save this model, let's go ahead and save it. So let's do one thing. Let's also make one directory. Let's go back there for just a second because I like let's get into the habit of making a new directory in our project for assets. And in this directory, let's make one for Blender. So when we work on as a team on larger projects, we want to include all of the assets of everything that we're working on. But also, we do not want these to be bundled with Decentraland. So we can go into here, into the DCL ignore, and we can put in assets. So that way, when we finally do push this up to a property, we don't really have to worry about the large files that might, no one needs to download the source files. Okay, cool. Session 3. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's export this. So if you go to File, Export, the GLTF. So this is an open source file format. Hold on, got to bounce out of these directories. I don't know, where was it? It was, I'm sorry, I have it in a different folder. Workshop session 4, and so there's models. I'm gonna name this thing just call it plot.glb. Okay, we'll notice on the right hand side in Blender we have a bunch of different file formats. Right? We got GLTF binary, and if I click this drop down, there's also a GLTF, and then there's this other separate one called GLTF plus bin and textures. So even though it's the same format, they do offer different ways of bundling it together. You can think of a GLB file as a zipped up version of all of the assets that make up your model. So it's the vector data, where all the little XYZs and how they all connect is one bit of the file. The textures and the materials and all those other things, they all get bundled together into the GLB file itself, which is a binary. It's like a zip. The GLTF, it exports the same information, but it exports it in like a XML data structure. And then this one down below is, it separates all of the textures instead of zipping them all into a single package. It makes it so that you can update all it. You can share textures across multiple models. So if you have a model that is using a texture and another model using the same texture, you wouldn't want to bundle them together because it's not as resourceful. We're just going to do a GLB for now, and I'll probably reiterate over that GLB GLTF a little bit. So let's go ahead and let's just save this file. Okay. So I think it was last time we kind of went over the Babylon B, no, sandbox. So this was the 3D model viewer that we had. So let's open up Finder. We have our session 4. Models. All right, so we can just grab our plot and we can pull it in to take a look at this model. Well, there it is. I mean, it's not pretty at all, and we don't have any textures or anything, and it's not functional in any way, but we do know that we are exporting it properly, and we're going to get our workflow down, so this is going to be good. So I can close that now. We don't have to really worry with it. I don't know if Nick is in. If Nick is in, if Nicholas Earnshaw is in, you can add him as a mic. You can put his mic on. Nick is that'd be good. Sorry, I'm getting messages. Okay, so let's get it into Decentraland. So go to our Visual Studio. So our source. This is session 3 though. This isn't the right one. So to session 4. Sorry, this is our file. Let's go ahead and let's just make we went over this in previous sessions, but let's just make a new class that we can pull this into Decentraland. So let's do class. Let's call this plot extends entity. There is a constructor function. So as we went over in the past, The entity is how we represent 3D models and everything in Decentraland. Almost everything is either an entity, a component, or a system. So we do that. So every entity does need two things. It needs a location. So let's go ahead and let's do add a component for the transform. And the transform object, it takes some properties. Let's do a position. We have to place it in space. So as we did last time, we pass in a vector3 object, which is just an XYZ of where this should exist in space. We might need to manipulate it. So I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna add it, but I'm not gonna change any of the values for right now. And we need to add a shape. So let's do a new GLTF shape. TypeScript is fantastic in that it will autocomplete a lot of things for you. We know that our file is plot.glb. So that's it. And we should also now, the third and most important thing is we have to add it to the engine. So it exists there in like the limbo world, but it's not actually being rendered to Decentraland. So we do engine.add entity and we do this. Cool. So now let's start up our project. So after we did an init, we did all this stuff, we never started it up. So let's do DCL start in the session for directory and it'll open a new window and it'll load it in. And hopefully we'll have a big ugly cube. Let's see. Oh, it is not there. Something. Yes, just make sure I saved it. Oh, you know what? I made the class, but I didn't actually add it into the world. So let's do, oh, sorry, const plot equals new plot. That should do it. Let's save it. Yep, there it is. Our big cube. It appeared for a second, and then it disappeared. So one of the reasons why this happens, it didn't used to do this in the previous versions, but every time I save, it's going to reload. And this is because it's positioned outside of my plot. So I can do one or two things. I highly recommend actually going into Blender, and I guess it needs to be on the other side of all of this. So let's just shift this entire model really quickly. So let's grab it all. I can also go in here and just use the rotation, by the way. Maybe I'll just do that. Save some time. So we talked about this as well last week, which is that the way that rotations work, the value is called a quaternion, which usually takes an X, Y, Z and a W value, but we don't work in that in the real world. We use 0 to 360 for degrees, and that's what a Euler is. So I'm just going to be using this to just quickly rotate it. Alternatively, I can come into Blender and just rotate the whole thing and move it to over this side, for instance. But nope, that worked just fine. I just rotated it 90 degrees. So now we have our model over here. So let's start by messing with it. Okay, cool. So let's go back to Blender. Let's see. I'm gonna move it over a little bit. I'm not paying attention to any questions. Let me just make sure that I got that up on the screen. Okay, if anyone has any questions, just please send it in the chat. I'll try to address it. Okay, so this is a really ugly, terrible looking building. Let's click on it so we have it selected. It's an orange outline that we saw before. And let's go to edit, or you can hit tab. Okay, cool. And now we're going to get introduced to let's see, a couple tools, I guess. We're going to use the loop cut. So when this loop cut it's a horizontal cube. If you hover over it, it goes down to extrude region, inset faces, bevel, and loop cut. And once you enable this, you hover over certain parts of your model, and it's going to kind of suggest, hey, you want me to cut this? Where do you want me to cut it? Right. So that's this yellow. It's kind of just suggesting where this can be cut. So we want to put a door in here. So I don't know the exact height, but I'm going to want to cut it around the center. So I'm just going to click it. Now it's orange. And I'm going to try to cut it this way. And once you do that, you can also click and drag it to a specific part. I'm just going to do this one more time on this side. Okay. You also have down here some other tools. We're not going to really need them right now, but you can increase the amount of slices and stuff here. I'm just going to leave it as one because it should be fine for now. Okay, so I'm going to go to the move tool real quick. And I'm going to click on I'm going to now select the face. And now I could just select this face and I can hit X to delete it. And now it's going to ask me like, hey, man, I got a bunch of different ways to delete this. This cube has 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices on every one of its corners. So if I hit X and I delete those vertices, it's going to delete the whole thing, essentially, the whole side, because those vertices that hold up the other parts of the model are no longer there. Right? I don't want that. If I just get rid of the edges, we'll see it just got rid of this one and this one and this one. What we really want is just to delete the face. So we hit X and we do only faces for this. So now we have our little door. I want to test out this really quickly in Decentraland. You see what height this thing is. So I'm going to do file, export, the GLTF, and just click on plot. It automatically does this. So you can just usually just hit the export button. And it did refresh. I don't know if it fully redid the model. I'm just going to run around it real quick. It did not. So whenever you actually update a model in this process, you generally have to hit refresh on it. When you're doing just simple code stuff, it doesn't really have a big issue. But because it's importing the model, it tends to need a little bit of, it needs to like kind of restart entirely. So let's go look at one of our walls. We should have it. It's always the last wall. Cool. Now, this introduces us to the first very popular problem in Decentraland, which is a thing called normals. So you'll notice that when you walk inside, like where did my box go? Right? I can see the shadow, oddly, of the door, but like what happened here? Well, this is because each of our faces of our model here, if we go into edit mode again, right, an easy way to see the normals of our model is there's this double circle. You can click this little arrow. There's a lot of things that are very confusing, and most of which you don't really have to pay attention to. But at the very bottom, there's this added view for normals. I'm just going to toggle it on so you can see it. You click the face and then adjust the size of it. Right, we see these little blue lines are starting to appear on our mesh. Right, this is pointing in the direction that they're facing, and they don't have anything on the other side of it. Like it doesn't know at the moment to render both sides of this. It's a playing card where it only has one side. So there's two ways of approaching this, and I'll do the simplest one to start because we need to start getting into textures. So now that I'm in edit mode, I'm going to select all by hitting A. We got the whole thing. And now we're going to get introduced over here to this little round ball. I'm just going to zoom in as much as I can. So you see like this green triangle, and the tab right underneath it is the material property. So we're gonna tell the texture, I want you to render on both sides. And this will also allow us to maybe add some other weird colors and various things to our property. There are no materials attached to this at all, so let's just go ahead and hit plus. It created something, but it just created a reference or a point. It doesn't actually have a material at all. It's just like, hey, I know you want a material. So let's go ahead and hit new. And we have a new material. It auto names it. And in here, let's open this up. It'll give us the idea, like the beginning of what our material will look like. We have our base color, which started off as white, but let's go ahead and let's maybe make this more of like a dark brown. just general Photoshop color wheel type of stuff that you might already be used to. Let's just change the default color of it. There's some other properties in here too, including roughness and metallic. Let's just go over those really quickly. So if you look up Blender, if you do a search in Google for Blender GLTF, it's a really in-depth manual about what this entire file format really is all about. And I accidentally went backwards. So what this model format allows is it's very rigid. So you can only do a certain amount of types of textures. We have a base color, which is what I just kind of changed, but it was just a solid color. There's metallic, there's roughness, there's emissive, occlusion, and normal. So metal is the way that the light will bounce off of an object. And the best way to take a look at this is if we go back to Sketchfab, they have a wonderful way of visualizing what each of these types of things do to a model. So if you go to like something like this, for instance, which is kind of a cool looking hand. If you go to the model and let's go full screen. If you go to the model inspector on this thing, you'll see a lot of the same stuff over here on the left. We can switch between this is the base color. So this is a texture that is being applied to our 3D model that just like how we just made that building red. This just indicates that certain parts of this mesh are, some are red, some are blue, some are green. Metalness is another attribute that if the color is more white, what that does is that lets the renderer know that the light bounces off of it, right? And roughness does the same thing. These both together work often together. When we make more complicated textures and maybe a little bit, we'll see that they're always bound to each other. So one of them it's about how reflective the entire property is, and then another one is like how is it more like a mirror, or is it more like a I don't know, like a piece of like a metal arm like this is, right? So if it was a mirror, the the roughness would be really low and the metalness would be like up very high. It would almost look like chrome. It takes a little getting used to for some of it, but it's fine. We also have the normal map. So I don't think that for most of us we'll be dealing with normal maps. It's a more complicated texture technique, but what it does is it takes it takes a texture and it wraps it around your model, and it gives more information to your 3D renderer to say, hey, like there's more detail going on here. And we can see that if we go to this map cap view. This is just a way that this specific viewer is rendering. We'll see that this whole section here appears completely flat. That's the 3D geometry of the model itself. But if you look at the normal map, there's like these three little lines here. There's a bunch of rivets. Now this is just on the texture of a normal map texture. The color is crazy and trippy, and that's because the red, green, and blue channels of the picture are giving it like it's saying that it extrudes a little bit in the x-axis on this on the red pane, a little bit in this axis on the blue and the green. So that's what that data is. So if we look at this, it's smooth, but once we add that normal map, you see, oh, it gets a little bit crazier. I mean, it's like it's no added. I mean, there's a little bit of an added rendering hit, but it's so much better than having if those are individual little triangles on your model. Holy crap, right? It would be a lot to render, and this is what the wireframe looks like too. You can see like those little lines are not in that mesh at all. Okay, so there's also a thing called AO mapping, which it just adds a level of shadowing, a natural kind of shadow. Now, Decentraland already has this built in to it. So actually, let's see. Decentraland has, let me just load it up. Actually, you know what? I don't have to because we have it already in here. So this is the world. You got our weirdly one-sided cube. But in Decentraland, if you go to your graphics, you have a bunch of cool features and everything, but you also have the ambient occlusion. And by adjusting this, I can't move this around too well, but if it's off, you'll notice that there are no shadows whatsoever. We can add a little bit of low. It just kind of adds some highlights, right? You can see, actually, you can kind of see more of it impacting the tree in the background because this model I'm dealing with is just so simple. But you don't have to deal with that one too much. So in terms of how complicated and crazy our models can get, we're really kind of just dealing with just a couple. We're dealing with their base color, metal, roughness. We didn't get into emissive. We can pretty much ignore occlusion for the most part. And we do have access to normals. So if you do want to get into more complicated models to, you can do that. But unfortunately, this is pretty much a limitation of it. Okay, so let's go back to Blender now that we have an idea about what some of these features are again, right? We have our base color, we have metallic. It might help to just switch this to a different view, actually, to a different view. Actually, hold on. Sorry, it is an EV. Okay. I just wanted to check the renderer. Okay, so we're back here where we were. I'm back. I went to the little thing. Let's adjust. Let's click away for a second. Let's adjust the metallic and just see what it does to it. It's not really doing. I think I might need to add a light. Let's go to object mode. I want to add a light, and I want to add a point light. I'm just adding a light to the scene. You don't really have to deal with lights all that much. Just increase the power quite a bit. Just move it around. I just really want to just show what happens with this material as we adjust the metallic. So, okay, cool. So as I adjust the metallic property, you notice that the way that the light reflects off of it, it becomes a lot more sharp. The colors become there's a lot more contrast. Specular, even though it happens in Blender, it's not something that's exported. You can pretty much ignore this. It doesn't, I would actually make it nothing, since it doesn't really matter, because we only deal with metallic and roughness in this file format. But you can see as I lower the roughness, we're seeing that the light is impacting it a lot more. You can really just play around with these values, but just for the sake of just being weird about it, let's adjust the color a little bit, make it a little more yellow. Let's say roughness is about maybe like that. Don't worry about sheen tint or any of that stuff. We can make it glow if you want. When you get down here, this is a very important checkbox. So this backface culling, it will render both sides of our texture. So by just clicking that on, and I just adjusted a couple silly properties on this thing, if I go and I export this mesh again, hopefully we'll see both sides of the mesh. I'm just going to refresh it. Yeah, there's some really complicated rendering methods that we could get into if there's enough time. I think I was a little bit too long-winded last time, so I do want to get over that. I guess I didn't do the backface culling. I don't know why. It's a little particular. But you notice that the building, it changed its color and it has more of a sheen now. Right? Those are the properties. So the roughness is actually what gives it this blue hue. When we go into our model again, and let's just crank up this roughness, and let's pull the metallic down, and let's resave it, and let's just get an idea of what the extremes are for it. So when we build and we render out, this is the preferred way, just so you could really see what happens in Decentraland, what it really looks like. I'll do my best to just quickly build something, by the way, just real fast. You notice the roughness. They remove that blue hue that we saw, remember, but it just doesn't have the depth, and we don't have the insides of it. So I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to come in here. We're going to get introduced. Are we losing or gaining people? Okay. Let's go ahead and let's just now we got the texture. That was the point of that. I'm gonna delete the whole thing. Okay, because I want to do something a little different. So let's look at the floor, and let's start by just building out just a simple one-sided wall, and let's also then let's add let's add a texture to it, like an actual serious texture. So let's go to edit mode in here. We're going to use this loop cut thing again. I just really want to just have like a single wall on the side over there, just like almost like to hang a painting or something on would be nice. So just move some of these guys around and just cutting it a bunch. You can get real precise, but we don't have all the time in the world today. So we'll just do that. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my face view. Now, I'm still in loop cut mode. I want to go to move mode. I'm just going to select, actually, I want to cut one more time. Oops, let's cut one more time. Let's cut right there. Okay. So I'm going to, now that I am in move mode and I have the face, I'm just going to select these pieces. You just kind of click. This is the shape that I want. And we're going to be introduced now to a thing called extrude. So what extrude allows you to do is you just hit E, and this actually just pulls you straight out. Whatever faces that you have, you can just pull up. It's pretty cool. I'm just going to do that. And now let's just save it. Let me save it as a Blender file, by the way. I didn't do that before. Assets, Blender. Let's just call this art gallery wall. Save it. Okay. I just saved the Blender file. I haven't exported. Let me go ahead and export it as well. So let's just resave it as a plot. Okay, refresh. Sweet. Cool. There we go. And we got a little bit of a wall. Not bad. Okay. So let's start doing some. Let's add some, maybe some accents. So click on it. I'm going to go to edit. This loop cut is really powerful when you start getting into it. I'm just going to cut here. And put one down below. Just want to give it a couple changes because we're going to get into texturing right now. Okay, so in our project, we had in a previous project, we had a we in session 1 we actually added and actually I think both session 1 and session 2 we had, oh, where is everything? Our textures. What did I do with it? Of course, it's over there. Okay, so in our session 3, we have in our models directory, we had these two textures that look really weird. I don't know if we ever really investigated them, but let's take a quick look at it. So this is called an atlas. Actually, Nico, if you're in, I don't know if there's a different name for it, but I always call it an atlas. I guess it's a palette. So this is just an image that has a bunch of different colors in it. These are the default ones for Decentraland, right? There's that one and there's a transparency one. But we're just going to use this one. We're going to use this to very easily just kind of add colors to our model. And this is called atlasing. You can also just do what we did before with the textures and with the just adjust the whole color, right? But instead, I think we want to do object. So there's the texture. We didn't add a texture to this model. We added it to the other one that was deleted. So let's go ahead and let's just kind of do that one more time. Let's add a new material with the plus over here. You click on the object You have the material property pane down here, and let's make a new one. It's just a pointer, so let's add a new material to it. And you can keep messing with this, but let's go to a new view mode. So for the most part, we've been messing with layout. There's also modeling, sculpting, UV editing, texture painting, shading. We want to go to shading. So each of these modes do they take you to a different perspective in, or a different viewport that specializes in a certain task that you're doing. So like if you go to sculpting, if you want to be able to manipulate a model, like you have a sphere, we could get into that. You can use these tools here to pull apart and extrude like a ball of clay, a model. And we don't really want to get into that right now. It's really cool. You should go to the Blender Guru, and he'll go over how to really make some really cool stuff very quickly. There's also UV editing, which we'll get to in just a moment. But let's go into our shading. So when we do this, it opens up this view where up top we have our 3D view. And the same rules apply. You can hit shift and that little button next to the one, and you can move around in there. Right, and down below, these are called these are material nodes. So the material nodes have almost they have all the properties that you would find over here, right? It's just in a different mode, but we now have like this cool way of linking things to it. So instead of the base color just being a solid color, I can take this model here, right? So instead of just having a solid color, we can add a texture to it. So let's go to our base color. So this is a really complicated model, but we can see that each of these little triangles are mapped to an image or a part of the image. And as I roll this little red dot around the model, if I get lucky anyway, where is it? Okay, so this little area where those three little dots are, you can see on the left-hand side, that's what this texture equates to. So we go to wireframe, we can see it a little bit in a different view, but hopefully it gets it across. So what's on the right-hand side, that's called the UV map. It's kind of very similar to the weird papercraft things that some people do, where they print things out and then they fold and they glue various parts and they have little 3D paper models of stuff. Right? It's very similar kind of principle. And now let's, just so you guys are familiar with what that is. So if I want to add a texture to my model, I would come in here, I will grab the image and I'm just going to drag it in, and now I can attach the color to it, right? And now we have this weird kind of thing happening where it's applying the whole texture to it, but it's kind of, it's not what I want. I want maybe some of those pieces to be a specific color. And this is where UV mapping comes in. Right, so now I went from shading, I'm going to go to UV editing mode. And I can obviously just, you have to get really used to moving around in this view, by the way. It's WASD is the perfect way to get around. But now I want to, let's say, color. I can zoom on this side as well. So this is your UV map. I'm going to click on a couple, these three sides for right now. Okay. And you'll see on the left-hand side, there's like some lines kind of things going on over here. That is where the current coordinates are for, how it's stretched across this canvas here. What we're going to do is we're going to go to UV, which is up right here next to face. We're going to go to UV and we're going to do a thing called unwrap. Cool. So now we see the three sides. It's kind of, you can see like they look better. Maybe we'll come over here. If you can scroll this wheel to get a better view. Let's see the texture here. Okay, cool. This is a much better view. I went from, you have wireframe, right? You have the flat view. I actually went to the textured view. I don't care about the lighting at the moment, but the texture, this is going to be important to me for right now. So I click on this. Now I can come in here and just with the other types of moving and everything, I can grab this with A, right? And I can hit S to scale. So before we hit R to rotate, and you'll see what's happening on the right hand side is that it's zooming in, right? So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna scale this little guy down quite a bit, and now I could roll it across the texture, and I'm if it's inside of the cube, say like this is maybe a better view. Oops. You can see that it's actually changing its color. If it's in the middle, it's a little bit weird, right? But this is one way that a lot of the models in Decentraland are put together. There's definitely more complicated ways, but um, we're just gonna do that. Let's unwrap them again, just so they're all there. I'm gonna scale them all, and I'm gonna put them all in I don't know, like a light brown wall. You scale it down, and then just move it. So if you want to have a consistent art style among a lot of your property, you know, something like this is what they generally use. Let's select these tops and bottom things, and like let's say like maybe let's go to UV unwrap. Okay, notice that they're over here now. I'm just gonna grab them all. You can select box all around them if you need to. I'm gonna scale it down, and let's pick a different color. Actually, I kind of like where it is, and it's not even in a tile, but scale down. Let's move it. Yeah. And let's say the ground here. Now I made a bunch of extra. Let's look back at this. I made a bunch of extra faces that aren't really. I don't really need all these faces for the most part. So I could select a whole bunch of them. Oops. If you select one of them and then hold Command and click over here, it'll grab as many in the way. It'll try to just kind of daisy chain them. And now if I hit X, we deleted the vertices and the faces and everything. But if I just want to clean this up so it doesn't have as many of these faces on it, I can hit X and then do limited dissolve. And it just kind of, it cleaned it up a bit. So we're not dealing with as many of these things. So I can just kind of just keep clicking around. This isn't probably best practice, but whatever. All right. I just want to show you guys a bit of it. So it'll get rid of as many faces as it can. But let's say I wanted to now make this a specific color. I go to UV again. I unwrap it. Now I grab the whole thing. You can see the whole shape of it now. And I just shrink it down. Change the view back to the texture. And we can just, I don't know, what color. Just slide it around. And we'll do that for this as well. A lot of the stuff is muscle memory, so if it takes you a while to kind of do some of these things, so don't worry. I just wanted to show a couple things. Okay, so I think that's about right. I know the other sides. Oh, that's trippy and kind of cool. I'll leave that. Yeah, whatever. It's like 70s mod. Pretty sweet. All right, I'm going to save it. Okay, so let's export this out. I'm going to go back to my Decentraland. I'm going to hit refresh. Right, I'm going to try not to go over time like I did last time. So I think we have like another 30 minutes or so. So I might get into some more complicated stuff. But you can see like that's pretty, I mean, it's there and it has the texture. And if I spent a little bit more time on it, I'm sure it could look a lot better very quickly, by the way. Right. Sweet. I think that's pretty sweet. Okay. So there's other techniques to get more realistic kind of lighting. You notice Decentraland does do some lighting. I mean, if there's this shadow that happens there, I guess I can readjust this this map on the bottom there a little bit, but you know, you can do quite a bit with just this type of stuff, by the way. But let's see if we have some other models. Let's take a look at some of. Let's import, right? So I'm gonna go to File, and I'm gonna import another GLTF from an existing project. So we are in our session 4. I'm just going to back out of session 4. I'm going to go into session 1 because I'm sorry, is it session 2? Session 2. Session 2, we had a bunch of models, and let's go in there and let's take a look at some of these things. So we had a crate, a door, there was a facade, I believe. So yeah, let's maybe mess with that facade a little bit. So let's import it into our scene. You guys might remember this from before, from other sessions. You can do a lot of the other things like from the layout view, by the way, that, actually I should probably explain what I just did there. You can still rotate, even though you are in UV editing, that right-hand side, you can still do all the shortcuts that you would do if it was in layout mode. So what I did here was I selected it, I hit R to rotate, right? And it just, I don't know, just pick some arbitrary thing. I wanted to rotate on the Z axis, so I hit Z, right? And now it's rotating, but I know that I want it to be 90 degrees, right? So I hit 90, but oh, it's not facing the right direction. I can hit the negative, so it becomes a negative 90. Now you can see all this stuff. It happens up over here where the object thing is. I can't both do it in the blender and point it out, unfortunately, but you can see the number 4 appear up over here. It makes it a little bit easier. But now I could just move this facade, for instance, just like I would with anything else, and I can kind of place it about where I might want to shrink it down a little. So I hit scale, and it'll scale all of them at once and kind of pull it down and then move it. And this is kind of, you know, a lot of time you really just want to just get an idea or something across, and then you can give it to your 3D modeler, or if you want to spend more time on it. But sometimes you just want to get something out of the door just to play around with it and see what it's like. Okay, so we remember that before this thing, it has a collider in it because that's what Decentraland needs in order to let the player know that they can't interact with it. So on the right-hand side, we have our plane, which is the floor, but now it also includes our art gallery wall, right? But because we imported the facade, it kind of came in as a bundle of stuff. So we can open it up like it's a folder structure and take a look at what's going on the inside. So we can toggle on and off certain pieces of it that we do and don't want. So we have the collider, which is making it look really weird. So we can toggle that off and get a view of it, right? The whole facade there. We have the hood, which is that one piece. Maybe you don't want that. Or maybe instead what you want is to maybe write your name on the top of it. Maybe we'll do that. But let's just save and export it. Because I'm just gonna run it one more time. I just want to show you guys a couple of things. Okay, so let's hit refresh. So this model that we imported, it had a collider, and all it really had was a mesh, a very simple shape of just the door, the whole wall, but minus the door frame. But it now, I can't walk through this thing. However, the one that we made earlier doesn't have a collider, and I could just, oops, I just broke into your art gallery. So let's do that before we write our name on this awning, and this one before we name it. So we have this shape over here. I can hide the other facade real quick. Hide all this stuff in here. I'm just gonna go to edit mode. Let's go to layout. Just a little bit easier. Okay. I'm just gonna go to edit mode, and I'm going to just. Oops, I'm getting attacked by mosquitoes. I want to just select these pieces of the wall. I don't really care about the top part. Oops. But this is the shape of what I want to use this to not walk through. Definitely easier ways of doing this. Now that I've selected this, I want the user to collide in this one. Okay, so now I can hit uh, Shift D to duplicate, and if I move around, you'll see that I have a clone of it. I don't really want to clone it, but I do want another one. So once I let go, um, that was just to prove a point that it does make a copy. I actually don't want to do that, so I hit Z. I just remove the move. It's still there. Like if I can still. Oh no, it's not. Hold on. Let me hit Shift D. Leave it exactly where it is. Hit Enter. Okay, it's in there. It's selected, but they're stacked on top of each other. I don't want that. Now would be if up here we were adding things earlier, but there's also a contextual series of menus where we can actually remove this piece from the existing piece. So if you go to mesh, you can just go to separate and you go by selection. All right. So now we have in our mesh we have this is the piece that we just created. All right, so we have our plane and we have this other one. I want to rename this to plane anything, it doesn't matter. Underscore collider is how you say you name that specific object. And now when we go to export our model, um, Decentraland is going to know that you can't walk through this wall. So I might hit refresh. Let's go over just a couple more things. I'm trying to get like a potpourri, if you will, of everything. Just a little bit of everything. So now you come over here. I can't walk through this wall anymore, which is great. I might want to put a door on this thing. I might want to, really put some time and attention into it. But, okay, cool. So cool. Now let's go back to our Blender and let's look at let's turn our facade back on because I want to show you another aspect of texturing. Okay, let's change the view to this one. I think that's a better view. Let me turn the collider off. Actually, the collider. You don't need this here. Okay, so we have this here. Now, if we want to inspect, and it's a good educational tool to kind of go in when you have these different models that you're importing from Decentraland's awesome repository, that you go in and take a look at what it's actually doing. So I just clicked on this awning, and these are all the triangles that make up that face. I can come over here and I can see that they're all the way down here. I can change the color of this awning very quickly by just sliding these values. I'm sorry, sliding the UV map for it around. All right, maybe I want it to be maybe like purple. I guess. Was it purple to begin with? Maybe make it hot pink. Yes. Yeah, hot pink is good. So that's how you can. Now I save it and it's totally different, more than likely. But let's say I wanted to write something, or let's say I wanted to include Photoshop. Maybe I wanted to write something specific. We can go into texture paint, and I'm just going to take some of this little gray area, right? Because it is an image, you can kind of just. It's not the best of Photoshop or whatever, right? But you could just come in here and just write out, like DCL, right? Now, where's my facade? The view sometimes it's annoying, but it does store the viewport. So as I bounce around between these different things, it will keep the viewport for what it is, by the way. So if I go back to UV editing, it's where that viewport was. Nice. But now let's say I want this to be that DCL thing. You just easily just go to I could unwrap it again just really quickly. All right, that's the shape of it. Now I'm gonna select all of it, scale it down, just zoom, rotate, try to rotate. Ooh. It's like CBGB stuff. Okay. So we can save it. We can save it, but also I can come in here in texture paint and actually draw. You'll see it actually update, like on the texture. This is one method that some people do. There's other tools, and I just want to touch on a couple of them real quickly. I'll show you some of the more complicated stuff, because we could do more Blender related sessions that are like very specific to Decentraland in the future. But I think it's really important that people just know how to get around in here and do certain stuff. It's probably more to go that way. But I want to go to questions if I can. But I'm going to save it, because there's also a thing called Substance Painter, which if you can afford it and pay for the utility, it's fantastic. By the way. There's also a method that I've been working on. Oh, there we go. Really ugly, obscure looking DCL thing. Now you'll also notice that the clarity of that is directly proportionate to the amount of pixels, right? So if I made that a larger, I dedicated a part of my texture to have more pixels, that would be a lot cleaner, and it would look a lot nicer, probably. Okay, so there's another tool called Substance Painter. And as that loads up, we will go to the website. So substance3d.com. This does require some money. I don't know how expensive it is, to be honest with you. It could be about $80 or something like that a month or something. It's got like one of those things to it. I don't know. I'm not too sure, but it's an Adobe product, so it does. It's good, and it's loading. So what Substance Painter does is it kind of takes away a lot of the painting parts that are annoying or a little bit difficult sometimes in Blender, and they kind of simplify some aspects so that as an artist, what you can do is let me see. Do I have yes? So I have a project I'm working on. I have my bar that I've been working on in Substance Painter, and I didn't think this far ahead. So this is I just wanted to show it to you about Substance Painter, not my property. You see my property enough. This thing's great because what you can do is you can pick a color or a texture, or you could pick grass or gold or carpet or chrome and paint with it. And it'll update all of those textures that we saw. So all of the base, it's a little more clunky. Bouncing between these things is a little difficult. Okay, so this is my property, right? But you can grab actual materials and just paint with materials, right? So let's take one of these tables that it's kind of doesn't really work all that well. I just want to show you. You can it is Adobe product, so it's got a lot of crazy stuff that it's Photoshop to 3D. You can kind of click on stuff. I can click on brass, and I could just draw. Hopefully, it'll let me do this. Am I on the right texture? I mean, you have to be on the right texture. Let's see. Back wall. I need to be on this one. I can do an entire session on just this. I don't want to really kind of go over it, but you can paint with these types of materials. It's really cool. So like when I did the floor, I did the UV texture for it, and then in here I just kind of made a wood. I grabbed a wood texture that they have, the defaults. You can go online and you could buy them as well. The computer's a little slow, so I'm going to try to talk through it while it's loading it. I think my screen just went out too. There we go. Sorry. Well, my computer was just having a hard time with everything. but I can click, and I'm actually making this this painting on it. This that is that texture. So if I was to export this, oh, how great is that? It's really cool. I don't know why there has to be brass tables or nothing, but you can do whatever. But anyway, so with this type of technique, so that this would be really good to just texture very, very rapidly, and it looks really good. And then Blender also has an ability to bake lighting that I could go through in a future session, and I'm not going to really do it right now. But together, you can get some really, really nice effects in Decentraland that I'll show you right here. This is the property. So between the UV, the just all the tools that I just showed you, between Blender, Substance Painter, and Decentraland, I was able to put this together. I had to help with another 3D modeler when we first started, who's fantastic. But all of this was like built with just those tools that we saw, and just a whole bunch of time. But you can see, like, it's looking pretty good in terms of Decentraland quality stuff. It's not bad, but this is the texture of the wood. I mean, if I was to save it, which I can do that, I could just re-export. I can show you that. These all be metal, but and then there's a way to bake lighting. I haven't perfected it fully yet. There's a little noise and stuff, but you can. In future sessions, I will be dedicating time to just go over these certain aspects. So you can make some really cool stuff without without like taking 6-hour long courses and stuff. From just I'll do it in probably an hour for each for the baking of the lighting and substance. But okay, I mean it's pretty much it. I guess, are there any specific questions that anyone could have? I don't want to go too long like I did last week. We'll obviously be doing future sessions on this topic.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome, Pat. Just curious about like the different interactive things. Like if you wanted to make a door where you hit E to open it and close it, can you do that in all one model? Do you have to like name it specifically so that you can grab the things in TypeScript?
Yes. So there's two methods of animating things that there's in Blender. I am not the best at the animation stuff. I have tried to do that, but yeah, I'm trying to see if we import a model, which one it was the door, I believe had it. So I tried on one of the sessions to do the door, or to get the animation, right? So this is what the model is right here. Okay. And it's got that collider, which is always annoying, but if it looks weird, just go to the collider and turn off, right? So this is the door for this building, and inside of it, it has an animation. You can go to the animation pane, changes the viewport all the time, but you can see that it has created a frame for every one of them of this. Now for doors, I don't think that it's necessary to do this in this way. What I would do instead for a door, in the one that I have for my property, right, for this one, is I actually just have a single model and I just rotate it with code, and that's it. So I just have it rotate, and then when it's after a certain period of time, it just rotates closed with code. You can do any of these things any number of different ways. So if like that's the angle that I tend to go with, is just I could program my way through it. Obviously, for certain stuff, you do need to do animations, and unfortunately, I won't be the best to explain how to set up a thing called the dope sheet. I think it is. There may be other tutorials and stuff that can help walk you through it, but at the moment, I'm probably not the best at it. Just so you know. But there's that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I mean,
Nice.
there are some tutorials on the official docs. So when you go to create 3D modeling, it does have some information on the bone systems and everything, and how to set up the dope sheet. I just haven't had the most. That's what it's called, dope sheet. And the NLA editor. They're kind of almost the same. They are, but they aren't. I haven't been able to get it away. But you can try to follow this and follow along and see. But that's how you do it. Or you would do it.
Mm,
So
cool.
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Mhm. Cool. All right. So I don't know if there's any other types of questions. There is a mission. We didn't go over that texture property, but let me see. There's got to be something amissive on this one. It just makes things glow, particularly, right? So we went over all the different modes, and I guess I'm sorry, I forgot that one, that emission. So this is what different. You do have this in Decentraland, so you can make certain things glow certain colors if you wanted to. So the final render, you can see like those things glow, right? So that's pretty cool. A lot of the visual effects, like the neon lights and stuff, they don't really have a significant glow effect. That's a shame because that's a missed opportunity. But we could probably just go in and maybe add that to this model, actually, if we wanted to.
I have another question, Pat. I know with the wearables, there's some kind of limitation on like the triangles and how complicated you can get. Is there anything like that with the builder here?
You're not as limited. You're not really limited at all with the amount of polygons and textures as you are with the builder. But obviously you must use it cautiously, because if you make something that has so many polygons and so many textures and stuff, it's like building a website that's like 100 megs in size, right? No one's gonna go to it if it's too big. So always be as resourceful as you are with building websites. You should be with building Decentraland properties. So I mean, there's also certain certain things that transition really well. Um, if you've ever built out a scrolling list for the web, where there's like 20 or 30,000 items that are rows, or columns in a long list, right? If you've ever built something like that, you know that like that can bog the entire browser down very quickly. There's just so many different, especially if every item that is in that list is really complicated. So what people do instead is they just show, oh, there's only 5 that probably can be visible. I'll render 10, right? In case they're scrolling really fast, or like I'll scroll, I'll store 4 above and 4 below, right? Like it's a tactic to increase the performance. In Decentraland, we can do a lot of the same stuff in here. So just as where there might be, say, an art gallery has a left and right scroll, you're only showing the ones that are visible at the moment instead of all of them just out of view, right? I do on some of my properties, actually this one still, I don't want to keep going to it, but I do things that are in terms of performance where there's an entire comedy club. When you go to this, you click it, it takes a little while to load, but it's loading it. So this is a bunch of models. This is a bunch of textures and models with this lighting system, and we're messing around with the fake lighting. But this doesn't exist when you first get there. And at this moment, how do I look at the settings? Oops, thought that was it. There's a way to look at the amount of textures and models. It unloads everything else. So for performance, the reason why you're able to run around in here, it's not a big deal, is because everything that was outside, all of this was missing when I went in there. I was throwing, so like there's a lot of cool tricks and ways of getting the best performance out of the property as well. But you should always be mindful of the polygon. The textures are usually actually the larger strain on the system than the polygons. So this has a lot of textures, by the way. There's a whole bunch of them. And the whole building's got a whole bunch of them. But if I was to, it works okay. But if I was really stressed on it, I would I would make it so that when you're over here, you can't see the other side is hidden, for instance. Or for larger places, it's you know, if you're on the first floor, do you need a you don't you can hide everything on the second, third, and fourth floor, right? If you think of it that way, right? So when I don't know, when I do that, I break these models into very specific chunks a lot of the time. Or if I'm in the code world, right, I would use that as an opportunity to make like a group of entities that are all on the second floor, all on the third floor, all on the fourth floor, and then hide or show them depending on where the person is. So like they don't have to deal with it. They don't have to see it for performance. Uh, okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. I mean, I don't hear any other questions. Nico, is there anything that you'd like to add about any of this stuff? Anything in the future that we would like to see?
Hey there.
Or
Well, I mean, I've never been much of a modeler. I've been learning more than anything here. Um, but I mean, absolutely, there's a lot of things that we're thinking that we should add in the Decentraland, like support for a lot more things in terms of like graphics. Um, like there are a lot of things that are like down on paper, but there are a lot of things that have been discussed. For example, having support for different shaders, maybe having like a series of like built-in shaders like a fire shader, a water shader, and several others, and being able to like use those in a scene. Eventually, we would love to also be able to like have free use of shaders built by the community, but that is risky in terms of performance.
Yeah.
Like opening the door to anyone submitting a new shader is a problem. One thing that has been thought of that would also be nice is having shaders be like voted on the DAO. So like if someone wants to propose a brand new shader to include in the engine, then that's something that needs to be voted upon or go through some committee or something. And only then it would be like available for use.
That's,
Um,
it's almost like with the web standards, right? Like CSS is always constantly evolving because there's a lot of people that are contributing their ideas and stuff. Like we didn't have box shadow for a long time. We didn't have the animation for a long time. But as the need for it increased, you know, the community got together and was like, hey, this is how we're going to be doing it, right? And then each of the browsers had to find their own way of implementing it or whatever. But like for Decentraland, we can kind of say, you know, obviously with the various shaders, which shaders for people that aren't too familiar are just it's a way of rendering water, fog, a whole bunch of different effects can actually you can achieve from a shader. So we can kind of I like that approach, by the way, because we can standardize them, maybe make it so that there's some variance that the user can determine too. But like coming up with these types of standards, this is like really good for the community, I would say, to like start thinking about in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bar glass.
And well, like one huge thing that is on the way, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but it will be happening. I believe there might be something in the next couple of months, is the native client for the Decentraland. So right now, Decentraland runs in a browser, and that of course implies that we have a lot of limitations that are not from the machine you're running things with, but from the browser itself. We want to have a native client that runs like in your machine directly, which can make use of like all of the all of the memory and all of the hardware acceleration and everything that your machine has at its disposal. So thanks to that, like we've been thinking like maybe we can have a series of like visual things that are only triggered when using this alternative client versus the web browser. We want to keep the web browser around, and we don't want to encourage people to create scenes that would crash on your web browser. So we need to find ways that can take advantage of a powerful machine while at the same time keeping things running reasonably on a machine that is still doing things through a browser. Like one idea maybe is to have light sources. Like light sources are expensive to have, like calculating. So it's like here you have everything baked, which is like a pretty common way to to have that run with a lot less effort, but like it's of course not as nice as, dynamic lighting. But it would be great to have scenes that can have maybe dynamic lighting optionally only when people use the native client. It's one
That
thing
would be
that's been,
like a media query type of aspect of it too, right? So it would check, maybe would we see something like that with the native, where we can, like if it's in the web, render maybe lower poly environment
yeah.
or blur experience, and then or even if it's on mobile, maybe you would want to just send, something a little bit lighter. And
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also we also talked about having support for level of detail in models. And now this is something that's also super like initial stage discussions, but I really like the idea of having the option of like assigning to a single entity like various versions of the same model in different like different triangle counts. And yeah, exactly. And we could even make it so that, when people choose a setting, like maybe they never go into the full HD setting if they choose to have low settings. But like it would mostly serve also as you walk away from something. Like when you're far away from an object, you probably won't even notice if it has like a very complex geometry or not. So it saves a lot of resource to keep things light and simple when they're far away, and only expose the detail when you go right up to them. We're actually starting to do similar things with avatars right now, and that has proven to have a significant impact on performance. In fact, a few of those like optimizations are not yet live, but they're being tested, and they will have a really nice impact. So the idea is what can we do to maybe allow scenes to also like include this kind of yeah, of dynamic level of detail. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting avenues in terms of this. Like then, if we want to talk about animations, there's also a lot of stuff we could do with like supporting different types of animations, supporting like parenting an object to a bone in an animated object. So, for example, yeah, like I think we've seen it before in one of these sessions. Like when you grab one of the beer glasses, in Genesis Plaza, the beer glass just floats in front of you. It would be amazing if we could, parent the beer glass to the actual bone of your hand. And similar things could also happen in, in any scene, not just with avatars, with any animated object.
So these are bones here. They are, I think they are in that format. They are in the GLTF format, but these are all named certain things more than likely. I don't know if we can actually see the details on what they are from this view, but they also have an influence. So each of these bones kind of have like a weighted priority. So when this purple one moves, it's attached to a certain amount of the polygons to certain strengths, and it knows to move those in coordination. So this one's moving back and forth, and it knows to move the elbow. So that's really, something like that would be fantastic. I mean, it is in Decentraland as it is, but to expose it to the user to allow them to be able to do certain stuff is absolutely fantastic. I would love that.
Yeah. Another thing that's coming up, like in the next few months, which is also interesting, is this would surely need to go through the DAO, but there's work being done in having a dynamic skybox. So like right now we got day mode and night mode, and that's like if you want to switch between one or the other, there's a setting you can tweak. But like we're discussing the idea of having a a dynamic skybox that changes over a period of time. What period of time? That's something that the DAO should determine. I mean, it could be a 2-hour day or a 6-hour day or whatever the community thinks is best. But that also means that whenever you build models, like the angle of the light source would be changing as the sun moves through the sky. So yeah, something you should keep in mind for the future, that if you build something paying a lot of attention to the shadow angles, that might not be as static as it is now in the near future.
Okay, that would be really cool. it would add a lot more life, I think, to the world too.
Mhm.
That'd be very awesome. Okay. We'll open it up, I guess, to some questions. We can put the mics on. I don't know if we want to end recording for the individual questions. I always find it to be really informative. People usually are really kind about the questions. But it's your call, Texas. All right, cool. Okay. I guess we'll just end it then. We'll take questions after this. We're going to end the recording. Thank you everybody for joining. Next week we're going to be doing we're going to revisit a couple of the things that we might have missed, right? So maybe a little bit of the animation stuff, a little bit more of the Colossus, just light stuff, and then we're going to be doing a job fair of sorts. We're going to try to get people to join together to work on various parts, like maybe a specific project directly, and get a lot more engagement. We're going to have some hands-on work. We're not going to probably record that session. We may or may not. I don't know. Maybe half of it. Just going to be. It's going to be an actual hands-on workshop, I believe.